Lycette is, many of you met him already. He's our FEMBAssador co-president. So his team organized the admin event 2 weeks ago. But just to say it formally, he's an assistant vice president, finance manager at Realty Income Corporation. He and Wing Lee are this year's FEMBAssador co-presidents. And we called this Leadership Opportunities at Anderson today. And in addition to being FEMBAssador co-president, Will's going to go through several other things that maybe you don't know about. Our Leadership at Anderson program, that you can actually be a teaching assistant. You can be a TA here. He's going to talk a little bit about some of his classes, the Global Access program. So there's lots of ways to grow yourself as a leader while you are here. And yeah, with no further ado, let me stop screen sharing and we'll switch over to Will. And yeah, you can ask questions as we go. And and I'll just hand it over to Will. And Will, thanks for all you're doing for the school, and welcome.
Thanks. Let me just reshuffle my screen. Yeah, so thank you for the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining. The way I want to lay this out today is roughly the first third of today's meeting will be really just giving a bit of an introduction about myself, kind of my professional and personal background, as well as what some of the motivating factors were for me wanting to pursue an MBA degree, and why Anderson specifically. The next third will kind of be the heart of the conversation, kind of living up to the title of like what all the different leadership opportunities I found at Anderson, as well as other ones that are kind of available to students kind of throughout the program. So kind of some, definitely great opportunities I'm looking forward to touching on. And then the last third, I just want to kind of reserve that for Q&A for kind of anything that comes to mind. It could be anything that's talked about today, or just anything about the program in general, or kind of how I made any of my decisions. If you have any questions that you think of kind of as I'm kind of working through some of the slides, please do feel free to kind of jump in and can make this an interactive conversation. So jump ahead to the next slide. So just a bit about myself. So I went to UCSB for my undergraduate degree. I graduated in 2009, majored in business economics and accounting, and minored in sport management. So I'd always had an interest in business, kind of going back to my childhood. When I was younger, my grandpa was a marketing professor at one point in his career, and just as a child, he'd kind of get together with me and give me these kind of financial lessons, just kind of talking about kind of very kind of fundamental concepts, which I think kind of sets people up for kind of success in life. So that always kind of planted the seed of where I'd be kind of, or my interest in business. So that's what drew me to my undergraduate degree, and also further on into the pursuing the MBA degree. So where I've grown up, so I grew up in Santa Rosa, which is a northern part of the Bay Area, and throughout my life, I've lived in Scotland. So had that opportunity when I was in second to fourth grade. My parents did a work rotation, so got to spend a bit of time overseas. Then went to school in Santa Barbara. After I graduated, I was up in San Francisco for 4 years, and then down to San Diego and Carlsbad, where I currently live. Just kind of as a couple things I like to do on the side in terms of volunteering. I like to be involved in junior achievement. I think it's kind of a great way to give back to the community. It's kind of got a business focus, setting people up for kind of financial success, really kind of promoting financial literacy. So I found that a great opportunity, as well as Habitat for Humanity. So on the professional side, I work in commercial real estate. So that's kind of a good alignment with my career, as well as ways I can help give back to the community. And then for hobbies, I like to run half marathons. So that picture at the top was actually just taken last Sunday. It was a half marathon in Carlsbad. So it's kind of great course up and down the coast, and set a personal record. So proud of myself. So despite having kind of a full class load, there are ways to squeeze in fun activities kind of throughout the MBA. So it's not all school. And then I really just kind of like to get outside. So like to go hiking. So that the picture down at the bottom was a trip that I took with my section this past summer up to Big Bear. So kind of a good way to kind of get together with classmates and kind of catch up. All right, so then turning a little bit to me on the professional side. So after graduating, I've worked at 3 places. Started off at PwC, working in the audit side of the business. This was up in San Francisco. So a lot of my clients were in the real estate, private equity, investment management space. I think this was a great opportunity just to get exposure to a whole lot of different industries and learning about the way different companies operate, which I think kind of helped give a good foundation kind of once I set out a little further on my career path. And I see a lot of parallels between the MBA as well, where the school does a very good job of combining different people from different backgrounds, different industries. So it's not all, you're not in a class just with finance people or just engineers. It's there's a lot of different perspectives, and a lot of the classwork is kind of group discussion based. So, you might be presented with a problem, and someone in the class with their unique experience will kind of approach it this way. I might say to approach it this way. You kind of still get to the same result in the end, but you learn there's a lot of different ways to kind of tackle the same problem. So kind of see a lot of parallels there. After that, I'd always wanted to live in San Diego at some point in my career. So found an opportunity at Qualcomm. Kind of made the transition out of the audit side and into a mix of accounting and finance. So in that role as a financial analyst, was able to support a bunch of sales and marketing departments, do some financial modeling, which kind of set a good foundation for what I currently do at Realty Income, where I've been for about 6.5 years working in corporate finance. So again, I do a lot of kind of financial modeling, get to work a lot with the senior executive team to present our financial outlook for the next 3 years, get a lot of exposure to everything that's going on in the business. And again, I think the MBA has helped me kind of broaden my perspective. So it's not, at work, I'm not just in a kind of finance silo, but I have to interact with, our acquisitions team, our asset management team. A lot of that's kind of what you learn in through the MBA experience, is how to work kind of effectively with other groups. And again, it's kind of each group has different ways of thinking about things, and it's learning how to kind of piece it all into kind of a cohesive picture that you can then present to the executive team. All right. So why an MBA and why Anderson specifically? So for me, there were kind of three big factors, and I know everyone has their own kind of unique motivations for getting an MBA, all of which are kind of equally valid, but just want to share a few factors that kind of motivated me. So for me, I've always had this idea of getting an MBA. It had always been kind of in the back of my mind. And actually at the time when I was at PwC, I initially thought I would go kind of the full-time route, kind of to help make that career pivot where I see a lot of people kind of pursuing the full-time program. But then once I got that opportunity at Qualcomm, I put the kind of MBA on the back burner because I was able to kind of make that transition that I had already been looking for. And one of the things that my company has is this kind of leadership mentor program. So I was paired with an executive, and one of the things that came up in our conversation was, is an MBA kind of would that be a good decision for me? And kind of talked about, how that could kind of help accelerate my career if it kind of made sense. And came to the conclusion that, I think it would help accelerate the career. There are a lot of people at my company that had gotten their MBA as well and had risen up to the senior ranks. So kind of thought that was a kind of good path to kind of help get onto that career trajectory that I wanted. So kind of with that in mind, I decided to apply for an MBA. Anderson was always my top choice, so I was thrilled to get in there into the program. But kind of the three kind of key things that were big factors for me. So one was the academics. So the school has a lot of great specializations. Specializations aren't necessarily required, but if there's a certain topic that you're interested in, whether it's finance, real estate, kind of social impact, these specializations kind of help steer you into here are like some electives that you could take to get to that kind of end goal. So yeah, Anderson has a lot of great electives. For me personally, I've done a lot of electives in finance. So despite having more of an economics and undergraduate degree, only had one finance elective in undergraduate. So it's really kind of using this as an opportunity to kind of get more experience on that side and some of the more technical topics. And then real estate, although I, again, kind of work in real estate, I want to get, it's more on the corporate finance side. So I wanted to learn a little bit more about kind of the investment decisions. And there's been some great professors where this is what they do for a living, and just being able to get that kind of real life experience has been amazing. Then also the global immersions, kind of a big selling point of the program, and we'll touch on that in a later slide. The other one is networking. So I know networking is always a big part of an MBA program. One of the things that I really like about Anderson is this idea of one Anderson, where it's not just like the FEMBA students are all kind of clustered together and the full-time students are clustered together. There's never any interactions. What I really like is there are a lot of those interactions, and even across alumni. So within the academic setting, I'm in a real estate elective right now, where there's full-time students, there's FEMBA students, there's EMBA students. So you get a lot, you get a lot of kind of that cross collaboration across programs. So I really like that. There's not a lot of siloing. And you also get exposure to the alumni as well. So really kind of across the whole spectrum. And then again, there's of course the clubs, there's professional clubs, interest clubs, so kind of something for everyone. And then lastly, there's the Capstone program. So there's 3 programs that are available to FEMBAs. I've put 2 on the slide. So these are the most common GAP and BCO, so Global Access Program and Business Creation Option. There's a third one called ASAM, which is Anderson Student Asset Management. I think there's about 20 people that are accepted into that one. I went the GAP route, and I'll kind of touch on that a little bit more, but really it's a great way to just apply all the different concepts that you've learned from your core classes. So, accounting, finance, strategy, kind of marketing, kind of piecing that all together and creating a business plan. And then, overall, there's this kind of that global perspective, which you can get through whether you do global immersions or this exposure to kind of through the GAP program, where you're working with international companies. So a lot of things to do. And then just want to briefly touch on a couple of my personal highlights from the program. So on the academic side, as I mentioned, I'm doing the finance and management organization specialization. So really all that is you take 4 electives in each of those areas. And even if you don't set out to do a specialization, I found that if you find a lot of classes interesting that kind of cluster in the same thing, you might just accidentally end up with a specialization anyway. For me personally, some of the electives that I've really enjoyed was a class on mergers and acquisitions, took a class on negotiations, and currently in a real estate one right now. And I've been able to apply a lot of this just in real time. So the M&A class I took, actually it was just about a year ago, winter quarter of 2021. And just at the conclusion of that class, I learned that my company was acquiring another public company. And kind of with all that experience that I had in my class from the M&A class, my boss was aware that I was doing that. So he kind of tapped me to help work on some of the synergy analysis. So I was really literally able to take what I just learned in that class and apply it to a real world situation, kind of add value to the company. So that was a kind of great opportunity there. For the Capstone program, as I mentioned, I did the Global Access Program. So for that, I was paired with a European laser manufacturer. So now I know way more about lasers than I ever thought I would in my life. So that was a great opportunity, as I said, to kind of, you're in a team of 5 students. And again, it's kind of tying together all the core classes, or all the concepts from your core classes, even electives. So you want a diverse team where everyone has kind of something to contribute in. It culminates in the creation of a 30-page business plan and presenting a recommended strategy for that international company to enter the U.S. market, and kind of how to be most effective with the resources that they have. So definitely a great experience. And then lastly, the global immersion. So I'm in that class right now, hopefully to travel to France over spring break. So definitely something that I'm looking forward to on that side. On the professional side, so been involved in clubs. So I've been involved in 2 professional clubs. So the Association for Real Estate at Anderson and the Investment Finance Association. So kind of 2 that are aligned with my professional interests. There's a whole bunch more, and there's also a lot of kind of personal interest, or really just kind of social activity clubs. So definitely something for everyone. Also been involved in a couple case competitions. So I did one last year where it was through the real estate club, and it was a kind of a negotiation in partnership with the law school at UCLA, and our counterpart was at Berkeley. So kind of a great way to meet people from not only the UCLA school, but also within the UCLA program. So great opportunity there. And then I've got another one scheduled for next month, which should be in North Carolina. So looking forward to that as well. The other thing, OCR, so on-campus recruiting. I did go through this program, and even though I wasn't specifically looking to change jobs, it still is a great resource available. What I liked about, and I do recommend doing this kind of for everyone, even if you're not looking to change jobs, you do gain a lot of valuable skills. Kind of get your resume refreshed. It's really kind of work on your like elevator pitch, which that's great to have, even if you're not applying for the job. You never know when you're gonna bump into someone important that could turn into like a future business contact. So good there. And I think I've also found the benefit of just kind of like thinking about myself and how I would put forward an application when I've been hiring people over the past couple of years. It's kind of helped me with the evaluation of people that I'm looking to hire. So there's a lot of different ways that can benefit you. Then lastly, networking. So AME is all Anderson networking events. So that's again where you're events that are not just limited to FEMBA students, but there's full-time FEMBA students as well. So a great way to kind of meet everyone. And then I was in section 1, so all day Saturday, and that is a picture from, I believe, first quarter on campus at a happy hour. Let's pause there for a second, see if anyone has any questions on that before I dive into the kind of leadership part.
That's the Luskin Conference Center, right?
Yes, I love those pictures.
So I know Tao Ann and Josh are double Bruins, but for those of you, so we have a beautiful new conference center that's just been built in the last 3 or 4 years, right in the center of campus, and it's just gorgeous. Yeah, it is gorgeous. Oh my God, Jinx, Maddie, that's awesome. And they have just delicious. They have a really Mediterranean cuisine, all locally sourced, and adult beverages. So it's an upgrade. So even if you went here undergrad, it's like 4-minute walk just south of Anderson. So just a little plug for the networking there, because we are able to do that as we start to come out of COVID again. So it's been a wonderful upgrade. So that's they have like 6 ancient olive trees that it's very feng shui. It's very beautiful. It's an indoor outdoor space. Feels like you're at a shishi hotel in Hawaii, in my opinion, because it's got the big opening doors, and it's just a great place, and very FEMBA friendly because you can get there quickly right after class and still have an appetizer and still make it home. If you got to be somewhere the next day and all that good stuff. So
yeah, those are definitely some of the best attended happy hours, because it is literally a couple-minute walk from the Anderson complex. So no one has any excuses. So moving ahead to leadership at Anderson. So just want to first point out that this was my path, and actually as I was writing this slide, I realized I've done a lot, and this is way more than I ever would have thought of kind of entering the program. I maybe thought I might have done one of these 5 bullet points. I had no idea which one coming in. So just want to point out that there's many opportunities. This is just what I've done. There are a whole host of other things on here that that I haven't listed. So many different ways to kind of develop the kind of leadership capabilities. So a couple of the ones that I want to highlight. So FEMBAssador. So this is kind of the outreach program to prospective students as well as kind of for admitted students. I know some of you were at the welcome event a couple of weeks ago, and this was hosted through the FEMBAssadors program. And what this program is, it's a great opportunity just to reach out to prospective students. There's a variety of events. We've got kind of Zoom-based just AMAs, where it's just maybe a panel discussion on a certain topic, and then just any questions that people have about what was the application process like, how'd you make your decision. So just a great way to meet people. And so I've been involved in this program throughout my 3 years. The first 2 is more of just kind of a representative, where you're just attending a few events throughout the year, just kind of interacting with students. And I decided I wanted to apply for a leadership position and was selected to be a co-president along with Wing. So it's been a great opportunity this year. One of the things that I really enjoy about this, there's a whole host of things that I enjoy, but one is you get to work directly with the admissions office. So you kind of get to see like kind of what their strategies are for the upcoming year, and how the current students kind of can help help with the outreach to all the different regions. So, we don't want to just like focus in LA, but, it's like, how do we expand our outreach to, throughout Southern California, whether it's in kind of San Diego, up to the Bay Area, or kind of even further east, Denver, somewhere in Texas, Chicago, kind of all the way out to New York. So what we did this year is kind of at the beginning of the year, Wing and I strategized, and it's a very kind of open thing where there's not like a set structure of like every year, there's 2 co-presidents. I think last year there were 4, the year before there were 3. So it's a very kind of dynamic structure. So at the beginning, we kind of figured out, what makes the most sense for the upcoming year. And together we decided we wanted to have kind of 4 directors helping us. So we had someone, the 4 directors are for internal affairs, external affairs, regional, and alumni. So kind of through this, through the directors, we've been able to kind of focus our kind of different initiatives. So on the kind of external affairs, it's partnering with some of the kind of large companies in the region to try to get some Anderson students to be kind of pitching the school to people that work at those companies. One of the things that we're trying to make a push for this year is on the alumni side, try to bridge the gap so it's not just prospective students talking to current students, but we also want to bring an alumni to some of those events so they can see, once I've graduated from the program, this is like how the Anderson MBA has really kind of helped accelerate my career, or kind of get me somewhere that I never thought I could. So really wanted to kind of bring that kind of all together. So it's really a great opportunity just to kind of put your mark on the program. I'm sure, next year, whoever the leadership is will kind of have their own thoughts and be able to take it in that direction as well. Next is Fema Council. So this is kind of our student council. It's kind of specific to the FEMBA program. The full-time program has their own student council. Typically, you can be involved in each of your 3 years. So in your first year, you can be, and I was only involved in my second and third year. But as a first-year student, I believe there's 3 different committees that you can be on. There's internal affairs, external affairs, and social. So each of those, so internal is kind of more just working with your section, working with some of the administration, just kind of keeping everyone apprised of like, upcoming deadlines. External is a little bit more outward facing. So kind of working with maybe some professional development things. So if there's people are interested in, certain careers, they would be helping to organize, maybe some professional speakers from that certain industry and bringing people in from the outside. Then, of course, socials, a big part of the program. So it's kind of coordinating happy hours, other kind of larger events like the, Halloween party. There's a party in Vegas. So some of the bigger events and fun things. But for me, I didn't do that the first year just because I wanted to kind of take it slow. I didn't want to just overwhelm myself by, applying for, being on the council, being involved in clubs, kind of all the academic rigor as well. So I kind of paced myself. I did apply for it the second year. So I was selected to be on the student affairs committee. And what I worked on specifically is within the student affairs committee, there's a program called the Brew and Buddy program. And what this does is it pairs first year incoming students with a second or third year student. And it's really just a way to ask like any question. There's like no dumb question. It's just like, how did you manage your workload? How did you like figure out how to just balance, personal demands, schoolwork, professional work, all of that. What else? Yeah, it's really just kind of, someone to bounce ideas off of and kind of hopefully to kind of make those introductions across class years. So that was a great opportunity to kind of run with that program. I was able to meet a lot of great people, just kind of setting that up. And then for my third year, my current year, I applied to be on the Alumni Affairs Committee. So as I'm getting closer to graduating, I thought, this is kind of most closest to my next part of my kind of Anderson career, so to speak. And what I've done on the Alumni Affairs Committee is kind of in collaboration with the FEMBAssadors, as I mentioned, I'm trying to bring in some of the alumni into some of these events kind of for prospective students or admitted students. So kind of really being able to kind of, again, it's not like there's a set thing where people that are on this committee, they have to do X, Y, and Z, and that's like all there is. It's very open-ended of like, if there's an initiative you're kind of given the the leeway to kind of run with that and kind of really make it your own. So I've really enjoyed that.
Will, could I just put a plug in for both FEMBA Council and FEMBAssadors, because those are the two clubs that directly impact FEMBA. Like, there's 50 different clubs you can serve as a leader in, and most of them have like a real, they're pretty specialized. But FEMBA Council impacts all 900 current students. So if you're looking for the opportunity, like, well, I want to put my fingerprint on the whole of the current student experience, that's FEMBA Council. So if you want to be a contribution to right here, right now, serving and giving some of your time to FEMBA Council definitely impacts the school, because Anderson is a very entrepreneurial place, and we do a lot of decisioning in consultation with student government, especially these 2 years of COVID. So if you want to make a difference in the moment, FEMBA Council's a place to do that. If you want to make a difference in the future, then FEMBAssador is a place to do that, because that is our meet the next generation. That's the place where, you get to interface with both prospective students and, like what we're doing right now with the newly admitted students who are kind of going through the whole decision journey of, oh my God, I got admitted, now what? Right? So I just wanted to kind of say there's a lot more than FEMBA Council and FEMBAssador, but I'm very, very jealous, because I always want, of all the 250 to 300 people who enter the class every year, I always want people who are really keen for growing themselves as a leader and really putting a fingerprint on the school, like helping the school get better. I love it if you join any of the other clubs, but I always want FEMBA Council and FEMBAssador to be super healthy, because they do directly impact the entire student body. So they're very much part of the DNA of what makes Anderson continue to evolve and stay current and build for the future. So back to you, Will.
No, that's a really great point. You really do kind of help shape, what the experience is like. So it's, by being involved in these council or any of these committees, you're listening to kind of your peers, like learning like what they want, and then you kind of are able to, in partnership with other people on the committees, like really put that into action. And really, it's for your benefit, for your classmates' benefit. So really kind of helps shape what your experience is like. So through the kind of ambassadors of FEMBA Council, that's really been kind of, for me on the leadership side, it's kind of really like leading an organization, kind of leading initiatives. There's also, I wasn't involved in it, but there's on the club side, there's presidents, there's VPs, there's directors. So there's a whole host of other ways to get involved in leadership positions within the clubs. But I think for me, my plate was full enough at that point. Another great thing is leadership at Anderson. And this was I think this was new when I started, or might have been in its second year. And it's been a great program. And what this is it's really kind of executive coaching. This is something that companies will pay, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to bring in, professional executive coaches to work with the leadership team within a company. And you get all this for free. It's all included with your tuition. So I think it's really, really a great opportunity to kind of maximize your value. And kind of specifically what this program is at the very beginning, you complete this Korn Ferry survey, or you have there's a Korn Ferry survey where you send it to a bunch of your peers, within the program, professionally, as well as people that you've worked with. And it's a way to collect kind of anonymous feedback. And there's kind of this big grid of like, these are some of the attributes that are like your strengths. Here are some weaknesses. Here are areas that you're kind of proficient at, but it'd be worthwhile to kind of spend your time to develop. So once you've got that feedback, you're paired with an executive coach, and it might be someone either from our career office, or they also bring in some kind of external coaches as well. It's really kind of dependent on what you really want to get out of the program. There's no set thing of like everyone is going through this exact same program. It's very flexible. So for me personally, it's we meet at least twice a quarter with our coach, and it's very open-ended. So if there's like something pressing going on at work and you want to talk about it, then you can kind of go in that direction. If there's something else, you can go in this direction. So for me personally, kind of the two things that stood out kind of throughout my time in this is one was at the beginning of the program, or sorry, at the beginning of the pandemic, where kind of everyone was, kind of work from home, and it was like, it was all new, like working remotely. Previously we'd all been, in the same office, kind of all that interaction. So part of the challenges I noticed from a few people on the team were just kind of the levels of engagement were dropping off. Just you're not kind of bumping into people in the hallway. So one of the things I discussed with my career coach was, how do we keep people engaged? And as part of that conversation with my coach, it was, there's no set formula. I can't just like do some online happy hour type thing and like not everyone's going to respond to that. So what I learned kind of through that conversation was, I have to kind of come up with a tailored approach with each person that kind of works on my team. So one of the things that came up with, one of the people that I worked that was on my team was it's kind of setting up weekly check-ins. So we just have like a 15 to 30 minute weekly recurring thing on the calendar where we check in. There's no like set agenda, but it's really, what are you working on this week? What are maybe some challenges? Is there anything new you want to work on? And actually, one of the things I kind of took away from that is he actually wanted to know what I was working on. So by me being able to share kind of what I was working on specifically, I think that helped kind of give greater context and greater meaning to what he was doing. So a lot of the work he was putting together would then kind of come to me, feed into some of my job responsibilities, which would then kind of passed up the kind of management chain. So I think that that was kind of really eye-opening to me, is really just to be a good listener and to kind of figure out what does your team actually want, and just be able to tailor it that way. And then the other thing, which was more recently, as I mentioned, so my company went through the merger last year. We just closed in November, and one of the other things I want to talk about with my coach is, how do we integrate teams and cultures? Because we were bringing over approximately 100 people from the other company, of which I would have 2 new direct reports. So just trying to figure out, kind of on that day one, how do we kind of welcome everyone to the team, kind of integrate cultures, because we don't want to make it seem like, this is the way my company does it and everyone has to conform. We wanted to also be able to be receptive, see, these are some of the best practices, that the other company has done, and how can we kind of mesh those two together. So we had a couple of meetings of that, just trying to figure out, and part of it was just, kind of setting up initial one-on-one meetings, kind of really just being a listener of like, what do you want to do kind of professionally? What opportunities do we have at the combined company? What can I do to help kind of support you to kind of get you where you want to be kind of, at the next level. So yeah, those are just kind of a couple of the examples that I've had. There were several other things that we've talked about throughout the program, or throughout the Leadership at Anderson program. Did you want to add something, Dylan?
Oh, just to underline the kind of right now applicability, like that part of what, for those of you who are like, oh my God, do I want to do part-time? Maybe I should just quit and be a full-time grad student. That synergy of being able to go through, oh my God, my company is merging. There's 100 new employees. I'm going to have 2 new direct reports. This is exciting. Change equals opportunity, but it's also a little stressful. And taking advantages of the resources of Anderson right now. When I was a full-time student in my MBA, it was all kind of theoretical. Oh gosh, that was a really nice lesson. I hope I remember that 5 years from now when it's relevant to me. But with FEMBA, it'll be relevant right now. And it takes, I think FEMBA takes a certain level of maturity to just dance with all of the demands on your time. To me, it's like cross-training for being an executive, because it really demands you to prioritize. You're committed to everything, except you can't do everything. So what do you do first, then second, then third? And that's the comportment that executives develop, profit, nonprofit. When you get to the VP and above for that second half of your career, everyone wants your time because you are a person of significance and you're making executive level decisions. And FEMBA makes you practice that professional competency set of executive presence and what do I do? What do I delegate? How do I dance with complexity and change, especially at those kinds of high levels? So just wanted to kind of underline how Will is using this. It's not, oh, this will be valuable after he graduates. No, it's actually really valuable right now.
Yeah, there's so many examples where I would, learn something in my class on Saturday, and literally on Monday I was able to put that into practice. I
Hmm.
talked about the mergers and acquisitions class. That was, a few weeks after that class. But there have been other classes. So I know Dylan just mentioned executive presence. So one of the electives I took was managerial interpersonal communication, and it's a lot of the soft skills, but are things that are really important. So like one of them is, how do you be an effective listener? Because when people are kind of in a conversation, sometimes someone's talking to you, but already in your mind, you're like already formulating a response, and you're whatever they're saying is kind of like going over your head or in one ear and out the other. So it's coming with like strategies of like, how do I really listen to like what they're saying and not kind of just be focused on yourself. And another lecture in that class was executive presence. So, he in each class would be maybe 10 to 15 techniques, some like, I never want to try that. And he's like, it's perfectly fine. Of all the things I'm going to present, some just might not work with you kind of with the way you are, or your kind of personality, but other ones, kind of try it on Monday, see what works, and then on the next class, kind of report back, what went well, what didn't, what could you try differently? So there's a ton of those opportunities. The other one, so learning teams. So even if you don't kind of have any official kind of leadership title, this is an opportunity that like every student in the program has. So on learning teams, what I mean by this is every core class you're on a learning team, which is kind of groups of anywhere from 4 to 6 students. So there are a lot of group assignments, pretty much almost actually in every class, core and electives. And one of the benefits of this is, especially in core, is they do a good job of kind of assembling these teams. And as I said, there's kind of a lot of diversity, both kind of professionally, kind of professional backgrounds, educational backgrounds, kind of just different life stages. So again, you're not going to be stuck on a team of like, 5 marketing people. You'll have, marketing, finance, engineering, strategy. And as you work through a lot of the case assignments through these classes or just other projects, you kind of each get a like voice kind of your strengths. So, and it's kind of really comes out, and especially in the core classes. So for example, if you're in a strategy class, or sorry, the statistics class, which you take in your first quarter, data and decisions, we had an engineer on our team who was kind of used a lot of the statistical stuff in his work. So he was kind of able to help help other people in our group where, it had been, a long time since we'd taken a stats class in undergrad. So he was kind of able to lead the team there. Whereas when we took economics in winter quarter, that was a little bit more of my background. So I was kind of able to speak up a little bit more there and kind of help the team, kind of through some of the assignments that we have. I think it kind of takes me back to something that one of my finance professors said. It's kind of leaders teaching leaders. So everyone has something to contribute, and the teams and kind of group assignments are a great way for you to kind of step up with something's a little bit more of your specialty. But also, part of being a great leader is being able to kind of work on teams with diverse people, where it could be a little bit more of a flat team, but everyone kind of leads in different ways, and just kind of being able to recognize, how to do that effectively, balancing the different ways that people work. So that's kind of a great opportunity there. And then lastly, there's kind of TAing and tutoring. So TAing, I never thought I would have done this, but last quarter I was a TA, ended up being a TA for a negotiations class, which was a great experience. So the leadership that I see there is you get to kind of work directly with a professor as well as with the students. So you're kind of managing a lot of things kind of on both sides. You're helping kind of manage questions that some of the students have during the class, but also with the professor, they've got a whole lot of things going on as well. So it's helping just to kind of manage all the kind of behind the scenes kind of administrative things of keeping the class website kind of up to date, responding to questions, kind of interfacing between the two of them. So kind of a lot of great opportunities there. And then on the tutoring side, for all the core classes or the quantitative core classes, there are tutors. So for people that might, statistics it might have been a long time since they've taken that, or accounting or finance. Second and third year students can be a tutor for those classes. So last year I was a tutor for finance. So again, that's kind of a great way to just kind of showcase your leadership skills of helping, really kind of explaining some of the kind of processes and logic behind certain things that are being presented in the classes. So just a whole variety of things.
Yeah, just another plug. I love the phrase servant leadership because I just think it cuts through all the noise. Right now, people are, our society is dealing with so much right now, and you want to get everybody in the room, and you want to give everybody a seat at the table, and we want to build a better future for our society. And sometimes it's like, well, how do I plug in? What do I do? And I think servant leadership is such a way to cut through all the noise, because as long as you place yourself in a position of serving others, it's all going to move the needle forward. So, a lot of times people are like, well, what is networking like at Anderson? And they kind of have this idea of standing around with a drink in one hand and, kind of like cocktail hour. And we do that. There's plenty of that. But like being a teaching assistant, right? Like that's networking. It's just a different kind of networking. It's being of service, right? Being a tutor. With the TA, you both get to help the students, and you get to develop a personal relationship with the faculty member, which is incredible. And with being a tutor, right, it's right, direct, and see one, teach one, do one, right? When you can teach somebody else, you've also deepened your own learning. So all of these just it's leadership, and it's networking, and it's all available, not required. And you may right now just be thinking, oh, I just want to kind of get my bearings first. But again, what I was hoping with Will's kind of 3-year overview is you can see, oh, I see there's an arc to this. It's a journey. It's 9 quarters roughly over 2.5 years. Okay. Right. And just we're hoping to plant some seeds today that some of these things you hear Will say today may not be part of your journey until your 2nd year or even towards the end of the program. But just to kind of, it is a build your own adventure kind of environment at Anderson, I would say. So, as you walk in the door, it's a little bit overwhelming, maybe, but it's also, there's a lot of people pulling for your success. And the more you get curious and show up to things like this and just start to listen for what's out there, the better your Anderson journey can be, right? Because we don't want to meet your expectations. Of course, we want that. But our real goal is to exceed your expectations. And I think you heard Will a couple moments ago say, when I look at this list, I didn't think I was going to do all this, right? But that's great. That's the kind of the tractor beam of the opportunity set, and it pulled Will into action. And that's what we would hope to be your experience also, that you'll get pulled into opportunities that aren't even yet on your radar. But that's okay. That's part of what you're paying for, us to bring an entire universe forward to you that will introduce you to parts of the modern economy and parts of our modern society that are possibly a really great fit for your unique gifts and talents that you're just not even aware exist yet. Because that's how you build a great culture. And as Will said at the start, well, I always wanted to see San Diego. He's got a skill set that allows him to do that, right? San Francisco, San Diego, LA, like he's building his own adventure in his real life while he's also building his credibility such that his career, like he's just getting started. If you start to kind of get a sense of who this guy is, wow, he's a CPA, now he's got the MBA, he's got these 3 different chapters, now he's been a student leader, like that. So he's building and building and building, just as you will.
Yeah, just to wrap up. Yeah, so if I saw the slide in summer of 2019, just before I started the program, I'd be like, there's no way I'm doing any of that, or no way I'm doing all of that at least. So it's really, kind of taking things gradually. Don't just dive in and kind of build it up slowly. It's kind of the same thing on the clubs. Don't join 7 clubs because they all sound interesting. Maybe join them over time. Kind of spend the first 2 years that are maybe like most important, and then once you kind of figure out how to kind of balance your time, kind of work your way up. I think just lastly, kind of on this slide is, I think one of the great things about an MBA program, it's really it's really a great opportunity just to kind of like learn about yourself and experiment. It's, somewhat of a low risk environment. So you might try something and it, doesn't go how you intended. It's, not the end of the world. I think a lot of your classmates are also trying a lot of those new things as well. So kind of their understanding that way. And I think if you're upfront of like, hey, I'm trying to like develop this skill set, can you kind of give me feedback on kind of how I'm progressing on that, or like, yeah, because a lot of them are kind of in the same shoes. So just having that kind of network of people that are kind of all going through that same experience, people have different outcomes that they're trying to get, but kind of they're all moving in that general same direction. So a lot of great opportunities in that side as well. So just to kind of wrap up, so I've got some like contact information. I'll leave this up here for a second, but at this point, I just want to kind of open up to Q&A for anything that was, maybe specifically addressed here, but also not just limited to that. If it's anything about, how I kind of ultimately decided to accept my offer to Anderson, or, what it's other aspects of what it's been like in the 2.5 years that I've been here, open to anything.
Hey both. Just wanted to say thank you for hosting. I've been listening to Drive Time on my walks, but it's really cool to like get to be in a live session. So really awesome. But Will, like when you mentioned that slide was like you couldn't even imagine, me as an admit, like I'm a little bit daunted by all that you've done in the last 2.5 years, and I'm trying to in the next like 8 months trying to collect tips from current FEMBAs who also like, share, just your insane workload with extracurriculars and leadership and coursework and also balancing a full-time job. So trying to collect tips from you on like, what advice would you give to admits who want to be able to balance it all too?
Yeah, I think part of it is, one thing that I said is kind of, start slow. You kind of bite off, don't bite off more than you can chew. So, if you're first in like, the first quarter, might just be, you just want to focus on academics, kind of getting used to like the fast pace of a quarter environment. And, clubs are always open. You can sign up at any point. There's also, you're not, just because you're a part of a club, you're not like committed to do every activity that they have. So if you're busy, you don't have to attend activities, or just kind of be on the email distribution list. I think that's one, is just kind of, pace yourself that way. The other, I think, important advice, especially being in a kind of fully employed program, is to be very kind of open, or kind of have open communications channels. I think part of it's, with your friends, with your coworkers, your boss. For me personally, my company's been very supportive of the program, but it's also kind of taken part, or it's required some communication on my end. So if I have, midterms coming up, or, finals, I usually know that way in advance. So I'll let them know, this week I'm going to be, kind of a lot of my attention is going to be focused on, studying for this, midterm final, working on this project, just to help kind of set that expectation. So I'm not, suddenly at that week and I'm kind of trying to study, and then I suddenly kind of get dropped with this, large assignment at work. So I think it's very important to just kind of be open with communication. And I think as long as you do that, people will kind of be able to kind of help balance your workload, work around that as well. So I think that's a big piece of advice on that side.
Awesome. Thank you.
Jay?
Hello. Thank you both for hosting. Sorry, I joined a little late. I was running from another meeting. But you mentioned, I caught the tail end. You mentioned how you didn't think you would be doing all of these things, right? And there was opportunities for exploration. And I wonder, when you were joining, right? I think it's 2019 when you were first admitted. How much did you know about what to expect about the program and where your career progression would be? And how much of that has stayed the same or shifted? And how much exploration did you end up, or how much exploration and experimentation did you do? And did you expect any of that when you joined, right? Because from my perspective, right, I'm joining, and I have some idea of what I want, but I also, a lot of the other stuff I'm not entirely sure about. So how much did you expect going in? Is that still true? And how much of that has shifted in your view? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. So people joining the program typically fall into two large buckets. There's the career enhancer and the career switcher. I think there's also the career explorer, but I found kind of people typically fall into kind of those two ones. So for me, I was more on the career enhancer. So kind of, I really enjoyed my job going into the program. So I wasn't really looking to switch, what really even change companies. So for me, it was a little bit more focused on the academic side of, how can I position myself academically? So that's where I was taking some more finance electives, real estate electives, things that specifically kind of would help accelerate my career that way. But I know there's a ton of people that also go through the kind of career switcher route, which can take a lot of different paths. Some people, they just want to stay in the same type of job function, but just change companies. And that's where you can kind of go through that on-campus recruiting process. They'll help you kind of get your resume kind of updated, how to have effective interviews, kind of put your best foot forward as you're applying for jobs. But then there's also people that are looking to kind of completely switch. So I know if someone's gone from working more of a strategy role going into investment banking. So it's kind of a complete pivot, and there's all those resources available at the school as well. So I think kind of, at least for me, going into the program, I had a pretty clear picture of the general path I wanted to go, but also kind of left it open to, kind of what little sidetracks would I want to take along the way. So for me, I think that was kind of just keeping an open mind on, some of these kind of leadership positions. I didn't go into the program saying, just want to focus on academics and, maybe meet some people and just kind of get out of there. It was, these are kind of the main things I want to get, but also just be open to exploring, different ways. And that's kind of how I kind of ended up on, several of these leadership paths. I think it's kind of just keeping that open mindset. But one, kind of knowing what your general path is, but then also being open to other things. And I think a lot of things you'll just coming into the program, you just won't know until you talk to a lot of your classmates, and you might hear that, oh, they've involved in this club, and this is like kind of how it's helped them. And then you're like, oh, that sounds like exactly what I wanted to like look into some more. And, that might be a way to kind of learn about it there. I think we do try to have a lot of events kind of across class years. So kind of the second and third year students can share their perspectives through on a whole host of things. And that I think just kind of helps broaden your perspective as well, and just kind of learn about all these opportunities that just kind of looking through the school's website, kind of for prospective students might not necessarily be kind of stand out. So I think kind of to summarize, it's really just, keep an open mindset, network, talk to a lot of people. And I think you'll learn that there's a whole bunch of opportunities that you just might not even expect. Cheyenne?
Hey, everyone. Thanks for the great session. Will, I had a question for you specifically, and hopefully it's not too off topic. I have a similar background in the sense that I have a CPA and I come from a finance background. So I was wondering, in terms of, let's say, something like a core accounting class, is that something that you chose to still take or opted out of? And, just in terms of tailoring your experience, how did you sort of pick which electives you thought would complement your current skill set?
Yeah, so actually having a CPA license is one of the unique things. So if you have a CPA license, you actually have to waive out of the accounting class. That's like the one exception. Everything else you can test out of. So if you have a CFA, you have to test out of the finance class. Same if you're like kind of strong in statistics, you'd have to test out of that. But yeah, with a CPA, you're required to skip the accounting class, but you do have to take something else in its place. You don't just get the 4 free units. But for me, even if I was allowed to take, or even if it was an option, I know people have different opinions. For me, I think I would have still taken the class. One is just to kind of, because really when you're taking your core classes, you're kind of with your section cohort for those first 4 quarters. And I think that's really just kind of a great way to bond. So if you're kind of, in one class, but not another, you're kind of missing out on a little bit of those kind of bonding opportunities. But I know others, they're like, I already know this topic pretty well. I just want to maximize the number of unique classes I could take at the program. So there are others that have tested out if they have that opportunity. So yeah, it kind of comes down to a personal preference. But then on the elective side, to the other part of your question, I think it's part of this was actually just kind of, again, conversations with my boss of like, these are, I actually just like showed him like, these are all the finance classes that are available at the school. And we've kind of had discussions of, where my career progression, kind of might be or kind of is headed towards. And just with his perspective, he's saying, these, some of these classes, might help you kind of get you there, kind of position you the best and might be most directly applicable to your work. So I kind of took that to heart and took some of those. And I think that's kind of how I ended up in, several of the ones that I took. But then there's others where I think I'd encourage you to kind of step outside of your comfort zone and take things that are like completely new. So like negotiations, I was, terrible at that, going in, and it's kind of that was a really enjoyable class because you're kind of like doing simulated negotiations with some of your classmates, and I think kind of, coming out much stronger with all these like new techniques that you can try. So I'd say, take things that might kind of help accelerate your career path, but also kind of keep an open mind. And this is a kind of unique opportunity to take things that are kind of completely outside of your realm. And I think you'll, even if it's something outside of kind of what your core job function is, I think a lot of the kind of concepts, can be applied to what you do.
Awesome, thank you.
I'll grab the screen back and just, I know we're coming up on the top of the hour, so, just thank you, Will. I've got just a couple of quick slides I wanted to run through, but I hope you guys got Will's his email and his LinkedIn, and he's and I'll show a slide here. He's definitely on our on the Connect with the Student website. So but Will, thanks so much for everything you and Wing are doing as the leaders of this year's FEMBAssadors. I've just heard really good things about the admit welcome last week, and we're just kind of getting started. We'll have a lot more of that as we admit round 2 and then round 3 and then get into the summer and really ramp up towards Leadership Foundations.